Alright, so I'm going to show you how to install the super storage, which is this little board here. You should have gotten this in the mail. It's a really quick solder method, so there's these pads here that are basically going to solder to these pads here. This is the Super NES Classic motherboard. You should be able to take apart the case with a regular screwdriver. It's pretty easy to do, a small Phillips head. So what you'll have to do is get down to the bare board. You can take the heat shielding off if you want. You don't have to, but it does make it a little bit easier just to work with. So we're going to be soldering to these pins here. It's very simple. This board is going to overlay on top of here. They're going to match up kind of like that, and then we're going to solder those pads. So I've already heated up my trusty soldering iron. I'm going to use a little bit of flux to solder this. I should mention that you might want to put a little dab of glue, either like super glue or hot glue would work, just in there. So when these boards meet, it's going to make it a little bit easier to solder with. I don't have any glue on hand right now, so I'm not going to do that, but it'll make it easier to solder this on, and it will make it stronger later on. So I'm just going to lay that there. I'm going to put a little bit of flux in. I got a little syringe of flux. I just need to clean this off. And flux just helps solder get to the board and distribute easily on the solder pad, so I'm just going to do a little bit. I'm going to put it on the pads first and just kind of put it around on the points. And then I'm going to put this down like this. And you really want to get the first solder point really well, because that's going to make it much easier if you're not using glue to hold the board. So I'm going to do this little corner spot here, because this seems to be the easiest to access. Just kind of put the board like that. There's a little bit of solder. Kind of stick it like that, so that should be a little bit secure. Put just a little bit more. Kind of secure it on like that. Now I'm going to do the other points real quick. Try not to use too much solder, otherwise it won't work very well. I've also tried a lot of prototypes on this board, so it may or may not work real well in this particular board. There we go, there's a better one. Once you get the first one, it's pretty easy going. And then you can just solder the others. So this board's on a little crooked, but that shouldn't matter. It's a little hard to do this with the camera right in my way. If it doesn't seem like the board is going in correctly, you can just use more flux. Or clean your tip off, that usually works too. There's a little bit of flux in there. Some along this edge. Again, sorry this isn't the best job because I am working with this camera right in the way. It's hard to kind of get in there and see what's going on. That will work. That will work. I'll just do this corner one. That. And I'll touch up a couple of these other points. This one on the very edge, that's the ground one. I found that that's a little hard to solder onto just because of the way the board is laid out. It has kind of a lot of heat sinking capability to it, so it's a little bit harder to get on. But so yeah, ignore the soldering job because it's not the greatest, but this board is on, it's secure. You can fiddle around with it and it'll fit, but it's, again, I would recommend doing the little blob of glue underneath it just to secure it. Now you notice if you try to put the board in where it used to be, it won't fit because this little piece of plastic is in the way. So you will need to cut that off, and I can do that real quick. Just gonna get my trusty little razor blade. And I found that the board there's this little divot here that the board sits on. So you have to cut basically this part here down to this point, and you can just kind of cross cut it. And then you want to shave off this part just a little bit more, basically the thickness of the board, which is I think 0.8 millimeters. You can measure that if you want, but I'm not going to, just because it's a little bit easier just to eyeball it. If you use a razor blade versus something like a Dremel, it's not going to melt the plastic and it's going to look a little bit better. And then we can just check. Looks like I need to go down a little bit more. Quite a bit more, actually. So I'm going to chop this off. I didn't cut this at the right angle, so. Like that. Let's try this again. Oh, that's the wrong way. Yeah, so that's almost there. Yeah, that looks pretty good right there. So then you can go and you can screw that down. It fits pretty well, and then you can just take your micro SD card and pop it in the slot. And it has some easy access, so you should be able to pop in an SD card in and out without taking off the heat shielding and unscrewing the motherboard and everything like that. And it should sit pretty flush like that. So the motherboard does sit on, if you're worried about structure, the board does sit on this other piece here. So your board should be pretty secured in when you go to lay it down. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and thanks for buying it if you bought it. If you haven't, you can get the you can buy it from the store in the links below, or go to store.pathar.tl, pathar.tl, and you should be able to find it there. Thanks.